keep it true. Okay, this is another one of those things, he's telegraphing information. Don't you remember the night we all went out drinking when we were 40, and we all did this, and we all did this, and we all did this? Don't write that dialogue. Don't write that dialogue at all. Find a way to show it on the screen, or try to find a way to not say it, or try to find a way that somebody else can say it, so that you're not saying, like for example, if rather than have a character say, don't you remember that great night we all went to the bar and we all got drunk and we, so-and-so had a fight and he broke the glass behind the thing and we got thrown out in the street and all that kind of stuff. Better than that would be they go to walk into a bar and the guy says, oh no, out, 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 out. And then, they leave. And he says, the bartender might say to the one next to him who's a newcomer and doesn't understand this, she says, cost me $3,000 last time they were here. Now that is so much better than, don't you remember the night we all went out, and you get into a lot of words. So you can avoid that one pretty easily. This is a good example here. A mother saying, well, since you're graduating today, no. She's ironing the graduation gown. The cap is there. She's talking about her future. She's talking about where Mama should sit. So information is always tricky. You have to find an oblique way of getting it out. And some of this information you desperately need, so it's hard. Okay, don't announce who you are. Show she hates parties. Don't say, I'm the kind of person who hates parties. Show she doesn't want to go. Anyway. Don't use funny lines at the expense of character. Don't intrude on your scenes. Oh, now this is a big one here. Only the characters have a right to be there. Don't use them to transmit your opinions. It's their job to communicate realistically with each other. It's your job to set up get the information to the audience seamlessly. So too often you'll see a writer with, say, a feeling about the environment. And all of a sudden, their character is going to go into something about the environment. Well, we all know this is a problem, and we all hate it, and but there's no place for political speeches in a story, because the story has to have its own inevitability, and there's no time to stop and have speeches. Now, if you want to write something about the environment, then do, what was it, Emerald Forest? What was that wonderful Boorman movie? I mean, this guy did a great service letting us look at. They're wonderful movies that do a great service, and usually they're not sitting around talking about it. It's got action in it. Don't have one character pointedly question another to get information out. Oh, this comes up all the time. Well, why did you move to, West Adams? Oh, well, I moved here because. That's real boring. So it's better if they're at, a gas station or someplace and said, the guy says he thinks he can come in here and, show us how to do things. And so we're going, he came here. We know he came here. We know that he's new. We don't know, we know that there's going to be something coming up that the townspeople are not going to like. I mean, this is all somebody else doing it. So newcomers are fabulous. You just bring in somebody brand new, they don't know anything, and they don't question you. They might ask somebody else, or they don't even have to ask. Very often you can forget the whole question and just give the answer. The secretary, somebody does something and the new secretary's there and this boss does something, and all she does is a look. And he'll say, look, the last 10 girls ahead of you quit. So then we know some stuff, right? First of all, we know he calls them girls. we know a few things. We know a few things from that. Okay. Now this is my favorite one. Don't write McDialogue and McScenes. And I like to write that on people's scripts when they hand them to. McDialogue, McScene. You don't want to write those. These are just, they're low caloric scenes. They don't do anything. They don't advance the plot, the theme, the character. So basically, arrangements are a big area where people fall into that. Hi, would you like to meet me for lunch? Gee, that'd be great, and you meet for lunch. Well, if people meet for lunch, we know they arranged it, unless it was a coincidence. If they're sitting there eating lunch, we assume somebody called somebody. So don't waste our time with thinking. You're not creating any suspense by that. So better, we see him walking down the street, don't know where he's going. He goes in, sits down at at this place, and we've seen her there, and we know we don't want those two to, we know they've had a fight or something, okay? So if he stands outside and looks at her and doesn't want to go in and goes in and sits down, we know a whole lot visually. Okay. Well, I'm going through these pretty fast, actually. What's next? Am I going through them too fast? Screenplay format. Okay. Screenplay format. Bugaboos. Take a look at these bugaboos here. Let me say something about movies of the week versus features. It's very hard to sell a movie of the week. Your sample script had best be a feature script. If you had a true life story that only you could tell, and I can almost say you cannot get it into 7-act structure. You can't. You don't know enough to. I have just put my little screenplay into, see how I make it a little screenplay, just so little that if they reject it, it won't hurt me. It's so funny. It's the same length of screenplay as any other screenplay. Okay. So if you try to put it into 7 acts, you'll get it wrong, because I get it wrong, and I'm pretty good at this. And I've written 2 or 3, well, I've sold 3 MOW scripts, and they made 2 of them. So the development executives sit around and decide what the story's going to be. Now, almost all movies of the week come out of some development office somewhere, where they're all sitting around clipping. There are people, you almost can't get a story that's been in the news to do as a, the thing you can mostly sell are true stories. That's a great way to get in. If you control the rights to a true story that only you can get, that's a great way to get in. And then they'll pay attention to you and they'll listen, and they won't buy your screenplay, though. They won't buy it. They will only buy the rights from you and put somebody on it, somebody like me on it. It is the hardest thing to break into there is. So I wouldn't aim my efforts in that direction, because you won't have anything to sell. I'd rather see you aim your efforts in a direction where you can sell something, where you can say, okay, I'd like to do this little story of the heart that only I can write. And there's a kind of director that, these Petries around here. Who are these Petries? Glenn Petrie. And there's a whole Petrie family that does little stories of the heart. And one of them's, is he still the Louisiana hoo-ha? Okay. Any case, that, and search out a director who looks for these little stories. And we'll get to how to get in, but I wouldn't aim toward movies of the week. Okay. Was anybody wanting to? Okay, great, perfect. Try to get a movie of the week. To try to break into movies of the week. Okay, it's too hard, and I keep trying to break out. I didn't want to get into movies of the week in the first place, but they offered it to me. And at the time I needed money, so I did this rewrite on the earthquake, which they'd done the earthquake movie, they didn't like it, the script that they had, and so they brought me in for what's called a page 1 rewrite. And that's not a very good writing assignment, because it's half the money and half the credit, and you have to do all the work. You can't just go in and putz around with somebody's stuff. You have to start from the beginning and reconceive the characters your way. And it's marvelous fun, to do some of these things, but yeah. Huh? Yeah. So that's how I got into movies. It took this guy. I had written a screenplay for him. This is how hard it is. Okay, I had already sold a zillion screenplays to lots of people, and I had. Well, anyway, that's just stuff I did, but. I'd sold all these screenplays. Where was I going with that? I sold all these screenplays, and one of them was the Whoopi Goldberg script to this guy, and he was going to do this movie of the week and wanted me to do it. And they said, absolutely not. So here I'd already sold stuff to George Roy Hill, for Redford and Newman. I'd sat with Hill under his palm door and his Oscars and worked with him, and this is not good enough for television, believe it or not. I don't care about that. So you see how hard it is. I'd done one for Whoopi Goldberg and Goldie Hawn, and the Whoopi Goldberg, I said, I want Casey Kelly to do this rewrite, because I think she's got what it takes, and this earthquake movie's a mess, and this is what we want. And they said, no, we don't know her. She's not on the list. We'll put her on the list. No, it took him 3 months. He said, I know I can't make this movie unless I get this particular thing Casey Kelly can do. And then he begged me to do it, and I didn't want to do it because the money was slight. But he kept hounding me, and that's, my problem saying no is well documented here. So I finally did it, and I'm glad I did, because you can make a lot of money on these things eventually when they get into residuals. Anyway, that's all maybe not interesting. Okay, screenplay format. I think you can just read this, because what have I done almost an hour? I want to make sure you have time for your questions. A mistake that keeps getting made is this business of capitalizing names. So read it very carefully here and look it down at the dialogue section too. Okay, start with first reference, okay? Notice all heads, where I have all heads turn as Jimbo Doyle. See how it's all caps there? About 30 and compulsively stylish. Now that's all I'm going to say to him, about him. Glides past the piano oozing confidence. Okay, Jimbo leans on, da-da. Okay, notice the first time Jimbo Doyle is capitalized, the second time he's not. It seems like no matter how many times I say this, people get it wrong. With extras, you don't name bit characters. You don't say Charlie if we're never going to hear Charlie talk or if we're not going to get to know him. That just confuses the reader. Put ball players. First time you introduce a ball player, put them in all caps. Next time he would be capital B, little A-L-L. See, like I did the hostess there? Those are for unnamed characters. Okay. Okay, the rest of that stuff read. Now notice that piece of dialogue I did down at the bottom. It has too much stuff in it. You're not supposed to write dialogue that looks like this except when necessary, but I was trying to take one piece of dialogue and show you all the cases. Okay? So a second reference to if the minister was speaking and some action broke it up, but his dialogue continued, you'd put continued. Now, something like trying too hard. If you've written your dialogue well, you don't need very many of these, okay? But say we didn't know this minister and we didn't know the circumstance. It might be worth it. A whole different line could be said, but I'm certain you take comfort from knowing Mrs. West led an exemplary life. Somebody who means that, and somebody who doesn't, or somebody who thinks she really had an awful life and he's had a conflict in the rectory with somebody beforehand, and anyway, whatever it is, there are times when you'll want to color how the dialogue is said for the reader. Now, the actors positively hate this kind of thing, but it's at this point none of their business, because you're only trying to, it's a sales document. You're trying to get the reader. Now, who reads your work will undoubtedly be a 22-year-old English major who's the first reader of your work. And these people have enormous power. And if you can skip that stage of getting things read and so-called covered, you'll be in better shape. They put all this stuff in computers now, and they can call from studio to studio and say, hey, did you read a script called Precipice? Yeah, we got some coverage on that. They'll look up something that some kid right out of school, no offense to kids right out of school, will have read and critiqued without the wisdom it took to know what you were doing or trying to do, and with all his or her prejudices flowing. So you can really be victimized by these readers. So I write to the reader, and I assume they're young and inexperienced, and so that they cannot make a mistake. So don't ever put this much stuff in here. But I'm just showing you how you can put in a character note there. You can put in a cutaway shot. If you don't, coughing and stirring from the crowd, he grows nervous. See, the choice I'm making here is that the camera's on him. And if it were I, say it's I at the podium, not too hard to stretch, the coughing and stirring would be what we're hearing. So you put things that you hear, especially sounds, but sometimes the din of a crowd in all caps, so that we know by looking at this that the camera's on me. Now, the director may make a different choice. The director may choose to show you at that point, and they'll film it from both angles. Anyway, Anyway, that's just read all this stuff very carefully. I think all that's clear. Stay out of camera directions. I want to do voices for you. Off camera, okay? I'm talking right now, and after my voice is off camera, okay? That's off camera. Offset is if I'm talking from outside that door, but I'm right near the set. Okay? Voiceover is if what I said yesterday is being fed into your ears. Okay? Those are the three cases, and I think you'll get those right. Don't number scenes, don't put headers and footers, don't show off your computer skills, use pica type only. You want to be obscure. You don't want to stand out for your beautiful form, your lovely type, your exquisite paper. You want to look like every pro that ever went through there. Okay, last. When does this end?
11:40. 11:50.
Oh, I have.
You have about 2 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. Storming Hollywood. This is how you sell the thing. Do y'all want to talk about this now? Would you rather talk about the screenplay? You don't care? Just blah, blah? Okay.
Got time for a couple questions?
I want to get the questions. Are the questions going to be on format?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take the format questions right
You
now.
have a character that's singing a song.
Okay.
How do you put that in there?
Just put the song in.
Okay. What about the music?
Well, music is,
I mean,
what would be the case? Give me the case.
they would be singing a song, but it's pertinent to the movie.
Uh-huh. Well, are they on camera?
Yeah.
Well, it would just be like it'd be like dialogue.
That would be like that.
And I would go ahead and put the lyrics in if they're pertinent. Now, another kind of thing might be if you've got, say, a stadium. You can put in the soprano sings the Star-Spangled Banner. When we're looking at the crowd watching something else happen, you can drop in what somebody's doing. And the way you do that, well, one important way to use music is in like a montage sequence where sometimes you want to advance some action, but it's boring. And you very often see this in romantic comedies. We don't need to see that how they fell in love. I mean, part of the drama might be how they fell in love at all that sets up the problems, and then we know courtship, what that looks like. And it looks like the same thing. You go to lots of movies, you go to dances, you come over, you sleep together the first time, blah, 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 blah. If that's not what the movie is about, then you would want to get past that, but you can't just ignore it. So very often you'll see, they'll meet, they'll set up the conflict, but they'll fall in love. And then you see them go into Central Park, and you see them so-and-so, and you see them dancing at the so-and-so, Okay, so that's called a montage sequence. I had one in the earthquake movie. The little boy needed to get well, and he was in such bad shape, he'd had a leg amputated, that, but we also, they wanted a happy ending, so he had to walk home. Well, you can't, you don't have a leg and you're going to walk home, something else has to happen here, and so I did a little montage sequence, which showed him. I made the kid, and I never met the kid it was about. This is how this works, because I never met these people until the night that they showed it out there, which is, it's such a horrible thing. It's just horrible to watch your stuff blown up that big. Oh, it's terrible. Plays are way nicer. But especially, when they've cast somebody wrong, and they're 20 feet tall, and they've changed your line, and it's bad, and you have to sit there with 700 people, all critics. It's just sucking a lemon at the highest degree. It's just horrible. Okay, so, but it's a good problem to have, I'm grateful to have had the problem. So what I did with the kid was I made him angry about the loss of his leg. And, that he was so furious at it, and then he was furious that the father tells him the first time that the angels took his leg. Well, this kid locks onto the angels took his leg, and he's getting real mad at angels and everybody else, the angels took my leg. my legs with mother, and the kid is just having a fit over this stuff. So setting him up to be a kid who couldn't adjust to losing a leg, who the hell could? It'd be a lot of hard work to adjust to losing a limb. So we needed to go past that with him, So I show him getting over his bad attitude in a montage sequence where he doesn't want to do it the first day, and somebody's coaxing him, and then somebody else comes in with a baseball cap for him, and then they put something down here that he wants, and finally he starts taking these little steps with the railing so that by the end he could walk home. I'm giving the cameraman grief. I love it. Okay. Did I answer your question?
I think you did.
Okay, but in a montage sequence, you just put music up, and then you just tell each little scene, one sentence at a time. Now, Charlie's doing this and such, and now he's da-da-da-da, okay? So it's one.
What about in a movie like Forrest Gump, where the music was so important to the movie, even though it wasn't something they were singing, but what they were, the song that they chose for each thing was just, for each scene was perfect.
Okay, you put it in. You put music up.
Okay to say that?
Yeah, music up. I got a woman way across town, or whatever it is. You put that in there. Now, whether they can get the rights to it's another story. But remember, this is, again, none of your business. You're creating what the reader's going to read, and the reader's going to hear your music, and later they'll have to put something else in. But probably the Beach Boys, if it's Ray Charles, something really awful that didn't make your point. Yes?
Regarding dialogue, I've read that in real life people interrupt each other. But that we should not use ellipses too much in our screenplay.
Yeah.
So,
Well, too much is...
have people just cutting their sentences short, or what? If they're being interrupted, do we just stop the sentence right there with no period?
with the little two dashes.
Two
Well,
dashes
hyphen,
are okay, but
hyphen,
three dots
hyphen.
aren't.
3 dots are okay, but 3 dots, now this is my understanding of it, I could be wrong, but the way I do it is when somebody stops a sentence of their own, that's dot, 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 what I just did. But if I say, now wait a minute, why don't you, and you say, hey, that's the dash. A dash is 2 hyphens, not 1 hyphen. I know you guys know that, but most screenplays come back with dashes as 1. They don't know the difference between a hyphen and a dash. A dash is 2 hyphens, even on a computer, and you don't put space on either side of it. The dash, which is 2 hyphens, it abuts the words. Yes?
The cover, before it's got the cover, and just the title typed on it.
Yeah, that's fine, although there's where you can get a little bit fancy if you want to. I use my Avery Label program and print out nice titles. You can do a file that prints all your titles so that every time you need one, you can peel it off and put it on the front. It's okay to make a nice cover. You don't want to have a printed cover, though. You don't want to take it out and make it look like the printer did it. Because what they fear is, first of all, that you look like an amateur, that you think everything's set in stone. And they want to get loose-bound stuff. Don't go have your stuff done up too nicely. Do it just, use the brads that they can take in and out. And okay. Are there any more formatting questions before?
Page number, upper right corner, nothing else on the top line, don't repeat the title.
That's right. See where it says headers and footers? You don't put anything on there. And don't put registered with the Writers Guild 100 times on there. Don't just get rid of headers and footers. You don't want to distract anybody from your play. Okay? Oh, this is kind of fun. Everything you send out is a first draft unless you sell it. This is kind of cheating, but you have to cheat. They want you to cheat, and they know you cheat. I have the screenplay that I'm most hoping, I've been kind of hanging in the balance. I have Cicely Tyson attached to the very first screenplay I wrote, the one I talked about yesterday that I wrote in 2.5 weeks. It's called Someplace Else. And it has been optioned by everybody you can think of. And it's been a frustration. So, wait a minute, what was my point? First draft. Okay, that's 12 years old. And it never says anything but first draft. Or I've gotten embarrassed about that, so I took off any name of a draft and just put the date on it. But the little girl, I found the little girl to be in it. It's a story about a little black girl and a black older woman. If you want to try to get something uncastable, try that. That was my original vision, by the way. The original, it was an original vision, and that's why it went so far. It's not because I didn't write a thriller, I didn't write a genre piece. I wrote something only I could have written. Now, how the hell could I have written a black story about Harlem? It was because I actually wrote the story of my grandmother and myself. My grandmother, who was a very depressed woman, that I realized at one point that my personality, my love to do, was a lot of it was about trying to get her out of her depression. And so in writing an original vision story, this is so important. Look at where you hurt, even if it's going to be funny. Say, where do you hurt? I mean, this works for novels too. I mean, even that silly thing last night, it came out of something. And if you find where you hurt, you're going to have enough neurotic energy in that to carry you through the whole process. It's wonderful. One of the wheres I hurt was my grandmother, who was probably, what we know, it's very sad. There are things we just didn't know then. And we didn't know what the chemical depressions were. And we didn't, there was no way to guide any of these things. So the story I wrote would not have had the same resonance if I'd set it on a Louisiana bayou today, because they couldn't have done it the same way. So I wrote it about a little girl in Harlem who's trying to seduce an old lady across the way who won't smile at anybody, and she's trying to make her smile. And when her mother, this little girl's mother, gets killed, or knows she's going to be, she straps a letter around her little girl and sends her across the street to this old woman, asks her to take care of her till she gets back. And she never comes back. And the old woman does not want to have anything to do with the little girls. In the course of the movie, the little girl convinces the old woman that if you don't like where you are, you should just go someplace else. And the old lady says, you're born where you're born, you stay where you stay, right? She's got her mind made up. So what I realized only after I had written this, that I was actually trying to heal my grandmother. And I wrote the movie that, in my fantasy, where I would have said to my grandmother, come out and play with us, and she'd have said yes for once. So that's why I could do that original vision. Then I worked for the welfare department in Louisiana when I was first out of college to pay back my college debt, and had a lot of experience with elderly black women in poor circumstances. So all that was my experience. Now, that did not get made quickly, but it got me a very good agent. It's like an impossible to cast. There's no star female who can, what they call, open a movie. And that means people will go see it the first weekend in droves. Harrison Ford can open a movie. There are very few women who can do it. There are very few blacks who can do it, and there are no elderly black women who can do it. So, I mean, basically we had to wait for Cicely Tyson to get older. So this, and she can't open a movie. This will not be made as a movie. However, because it's a good script, written from the heart. It has one of my very favorite things in it, I'll tell you. Since it may never get made, this may be the only way I get to enjoy it. The little girl gets out Octavia. The little girl's named Jewel. The old lady's named Octavia. Octavia finds her playing in her clothes, playing dress up. And she's wearing the dress Octavia had planned to wear for her funeral. And she's just furious. And it's this wonderful cobalt blue dress back from the days when Octavia had some heart. And she finds the little girl in it and just gives her all sorts of grief. And anyway, eventually, when the old lady has bonded with the little girl, and everybody's trying to find the little girl for reasons too complex to mention here, Octavia has to make a decision if she is going to indeed go someplace else, which is get on a bus, take the last welfare trek, and go as far as we can go with the little girl who some bad guys are looking for and some good guys are looking for. And she knows she'll be taken away from her because she's too old to have a child, and she now loves her. So when all the crisis is on, and the dawn light comes up, and Octavia's sitting there in her funeral dress, dressed to go live. So you see, it still makes me cry. So I know that's a good scene because it still makes me cry. Anyway, that piece, although it has not yet sold, I have made $60,000 on it not selling. This is not bad. And I still own it. I can still sell this baby someday. Yeah, there you go. Oh, it's one of the wonderful things about television writing, which you can't do, and I'll only tell you this, because you'd have to go out there. You'd have to be a New Yorker out there, mostly out there. I don't get all the work I would get if I was out there. I have to struggle harder because I live in New York. So, but at one point, the movie that I didn't, the movie of the week that I wrote that they didn't make, they called me and said, oh, we feel so bad. We're not going to need this last draft. We'll get the check right out to you. It was this movie I hated doing. I didn't want to do it. It was a mafia story. I took it not knowing it was a mafia story. I'd always said, I'll never write a mafia story. I'm far too chicken, any more than I would do the World Trade Center. I didn't want my byline anybody coming up there after me. I just don't like bad people that much that I want to spend that time with them. But so they sent me the last draft, which was $15,000 with their apology. And I'm going, yes! Yes. Well, that's not happened again. I mean, but it's one of those lottery fantasies we all have. Anyway, did I leave in the middle of anything? I know. Okay. Okay, so Storming Hollywood. So say you got this screenplay. And this nice man, he had read this sheet. We'd gone over it in a seminar. And I said, if you have any luck with it, I'd appreciate your letting me know. The day I was leaving, this letter came in the mail, and he wrote up a case study on how it had worked for him. And he, so let's talk about Storming Hollywood. Okay, you have to register your idea. Y'all know about that, right? You can read that in the book. You ought to have a good screenwriting book, and there are tons of them. I like the guy Haig. I don't like, I've forgotten his name. I don't like Sidney Fields. He's the paint by the numbers guy. Somebody that will get you to the essence of something. Everybody's willing to tell you how to write a screenplay. There is no how to write a screenplay. You have to write it your way. Some will say, sit down, get your theme first, get your this. No, you will so put yourself in a box if you try to pre-write. I started with one idea for someplace else. I had seen a little girl in the subway. Her mother was obviously on drugs. She was a mess. My heart went out to her. And I said, oh, if she'd only been born someplace else. That was my thought. Because poverty, I had seen a lot of poverty with community. And poverty without community is what real poverty is. And I was thinking about some of the welfare families I had seen in Louisiana. And that's where this came from. So that's the vision I had was, little girl tries to get old lady to go someplace else, and they succeed. Now, it's horrible what they have to go through to succeed. It is. You want to make it as hard on your characters as possible, but that's the simple vision. I wrote down a couple of pages of how I would get there. That's all, and then I wrote it. So sometimes I will outline something a little longer, but mostly 2 or 3 single-spaced pages of a gush works for me. A gush, if you know what the problem is, and you know that you're going to make it very hard for people to overcome this problem. Sometimes you can sit down and plan what the outside event is. Now, I mean, the first idea that came to me on the Truth to Tell, the psychiatrist story, the thing that came to me was, what if someone hired actors to portray the fragments of their memory? Now, that was the what if that came to me. See, that's a pretty good what if, and I don't get those every day. So if any of you had that problem, you could probably write something pretty intriguing from that. But these don't come up every 2 minutes. So, where was I? I never know where I was. I have no current memory. It's all. Okay, well, since I don't remember what I was saying.
The guy gave you this center well he did with it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's do that because I know you all want to sell. Well, just read Storming Hollywood because it's a whole plan for how you can. Now, there's this book called Hollywood Creative Directory, and do I give you the number? No. Shame on me. Okay, next class I'll get that. But anyway, Hollywood Creative Directory is call the 800 number. It's the 800 information, and you'll get it. And
We have about 5 minutes.
okay, so okay, well, that's not enough time. Okay. Anyway, the Hollywood Creative Directory lists all the production companies. And so the plan basically here is you get yourself some really good stationery, and you tell a certain, you tell a certain amount of tales, okay, in your query. Your pertinent achievement, short summary, okay, say you own the rights if it's something based on something. Mention why it fits today's market, casting possibilities. Say you'll be in California, okay? Yeah, I always put that in every letter that, I'm going to be in California the week of da-di-da to meet with agents. Well, they think, this person already has a business trip planned. And I'll be meeting with agents and producers that week and would love to drop in on you too. Well, here's what Rich Spano says happened to him. Now, I know one guy that wrote the worst query letter I've ever seen, and he had it on some stationery that says Westport Promotions. Well, you don't want to send something that says, I'm promoting this. I mean, this would be a no-no. He still got 17 back. I know a guy who wrote a good query letter who got 35 back. Both of these guys sent out a 200-piece mailing. And here's what Rich Spano did. He's a nice guy. Here's the postmortem. Overall, I'm happy with the quality of the companies who responded positively based on the films they've produced and the actors and directors they've attracted. I had 14 outright requests for my script from Randa Haynes, Todd Black Productions, Longfellow Pictures, Verdon Cedric Productions, Bud Yorkin, Rick Bobby. You may not know these things. Capella Films. There are a whole bunch of, anyway, I won't go the whole thing, but this guy got 14 back. Now, he got 14 back on a story which was about earthquakes that's kind of a tired subject. And so he had to write around the subject. Here's the letter he wrote that you might as well hear what one sounds like. There's a year ago this past week, the Northridge quake shocked Los Angeles. With memories of that earthquake in the air and Kobe, Japan in the news, I hope you'll consider my feature script as a project for your company. The script is a love story with elements of suspense about a seismologist, Jack, who lives and works in San Francisco but is afraid of earthquakes. Jack falls in love at first sight with a woman who later turns out to be a reporter at a newspaper that has antagonized the U.S. Geological Survey in the past. So as he and his colleagues discover pieces of the puzzle that could help them predict the next big earthquake, and he struggles to deal with his own fears, he must constantly ask himself, do I trust her or don't I? And if I do, how far can I trust her? I call it Any Day Now. It's not really a disaster film idea, or it is a disaster film in the way that Bull Durham is a baseball movie or Reservoir Dogs is a heist movie. Think of earthquake meets absence of malice. I'm currently working on my next script in Manhattan, but I can return to Los Angeles at any time. And he said he was sorry he hadn't put the I'm coming on this date sentence in here because he felt like he would have gotten an even higher response. This is a pretty good query about a subject that is, this is not a simple sale because earthquakes are considered to be in the purview of television. For the most part, features are avoiding disasters and real-life events. So he went into something that would be hard to sell. He still got 14 responses, and 3 or 4 others that said, if you send me a release form, I will read it. And his next hit is going to be agents, to see what kind of responses he gets from them. Now, if you have something that's more original than this, you might not say this one guy got 17, another one got 33 that had something really original and was well done. So if you just do everything I say on this list, you may or may not have some luck, and if you don't have luck, now here, this guy made this suggestion. He wanted me to show y'all. I thought this was so sweet of him. He put in a sassy, right? And he did something I've never seen done before. And he said I could share it and share the letter, which was very generous. A lot of people don't want you to do that, but he said that it had helped him, so he wanted to help y'all. He sent out this hilarious card, which you can't see, but it's got a mafia guy kind of bullying on another guy in a street scene from New York, and it says, "Hey, greetings from New York." Now that's kind of cute, and it really is possible that if you had some really colorful southern scene, you might get some and on the back it says, I'm interested, just send me any day now. Or check place, I'm not interested in the story at this time. And then he has for immediate response and his fax number, the name, what they should fill in. And the card says at the bottom, they wrote to him, please send a signed release form with the script. If you don't have one, call and I'll send you one. So this was a personal response he got by doing a very good job. Get very classy stationery. Look like you know what you're doing. Get cards. Stick a card in there with it. Be ready to look like a pro. You always, if you're writing to an agent, I don't know if I have this on there or not, but if you're writing to an agent, always indicate you have a body of work. Like, even in a letter like this, this was to producers, so you wouldn't be talking about, well, you might be talking about 3 or 4 scripts to one producer, but to an agent, you certainly want to leave the idea with them that not only do you have this one that you're describing here, but if they're able to meet with you, you would also like them to tell them about, you give your little thumbnail sentence or a log line, they call it. And an agent wants to feel that you're not a one-shot deal. So leave that feeling. Make them feel like they want to feel. So, okay, I will stay here for as long as anybody wants to ask questions. But that's all I have to say. I mean, you really read these carefully, though, because there's a lot of junk, a lot of stuff in there. Okay, anybody have any questions they want to? Yes.
In your original vision genre, is anybody buying any vignette type movies? I mean, there's been a few out there that I've seen, but
Little bitty movies?
well, they're like vignette, like various, almost like short, different episodes linked by
A theme. Well, it's hard. I mean, if you have a work of genius, somebody might buy it, but it's hard to say. It's easier to sell a structured movie than it is one that's vignettes. But again, it's how well it's done. We did talk about the brochure said something about pitches, which we haven't gotten to. Now, one of the things that I do, if somebody has the rights to a story that they want to take to television, if anybody wants to tell me the story in a few words, I'll tell you, or you can come up afterwards and do it. I'll tell you whether or not it's something I think I could sell or could be sold. But unless you have something really unique, a good movie of the week story is not like one lady called and said her son had been killed by a drunk driver who was still at large and still drinking, and the police hadn't even repealed his license. Well, what this is a terribly sad situation, and it's not a movie. You can't do that for 2 hours. On the other hand, another guy I know has a story which he wrote into a book called Revenge Redeemed on that subject, in which case, and this is the kind of thinking you have to have for a true story, that how big it has to be. Same thing happened. A drunk driver ran into this woman's son, killed him. They wanted vengeance. They got the courts to go after this guy as hot and heavy as they could. And in the course of her work with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, she meets the kid who's doing his kind of penance, his public service, and befriends him. And then, of course, that sets up a conflict with the husband, because now her son's killer the wife begins to bond with him, and they eventually forgive him, bring him into the home, give him the son's room, and today he lives next door. Well, there's just a whole lot of story there. A whole lot of story there. And how did you get from that point to that other point? You see, you have to make an emotional journey with some sweep in order for it to last 2 hours. So incidents do not good movies make. Complicated incidents, and you need to think about complication all the time. How to make it hard for your characters. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you. Did we give out all the handouts?